And I thought that's kind of weird that there's all this hype and there's all this conflict around the Dakota Access pipeline, and it's following basically it followed the line of the eclipse back to almost where X marks the spot. Elon Musk moved Tesla's headquarters to Austin, Texas, which is on the line of totality. It is right on the line of totality for the April 8th solar eclipse. And then his other facility, Tesla's other facility, is also in Buffalo, New York, which is again along the line of totality. He's channeling the American people's hard work and our energy into European and Dutch wealth. Corporations, just like churches, corporations are not that much different. You indoctrinate yourself into a corporation, and they use the occult in the exact same way that religions use the occult to manipulate people. And yet they don't teach us. They teach us that astrology is not real, it doesn't affect us at all, and yet they make many of their dates where they do significant things or their locations along lines that are related to astrology and the occult. As if this weren't enough, Elon Musk bought Twitter in 2022 and then changed the logo to X for X marks the spot. I'm just going to say I'm not a psychic, but I believe everybody has psychic abilities, but I'm not a professional psychic. But I've had premonitions, several premonitions. Before the last eclipse, and I think it was in 2017, it was the exact same eclipse. The last eclipse was right after Donald Trump won the election. I thought Donald Trump was going to be in office for 8 years and this was going to be some weird trial in the United States. I'm not going to pretend like I know what's going to happen, but I know the energy of the eclipse because I felt it the last time, and this was before I had my awakening, before I seriously believed in astrology or anything that I believe in right now, which is like unindoctrinated from the mainstream Anunnaki slave religions. So the last time there was an eclipse, I was waking up to this strange being it was like a purplish yellow being that was just like staring at me while I was sleeping, and I couldn't tell if they were good or bad, so I just said, like, I basically was scared. At this time, I didn't know what else to pray to, so I was praying to Jesus. I was like, send this thing some, like, just get it out of here, like, send it some, like, light, because if it's a dark being, it won't be able to exist. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, really, back then, which I'm still learning now, but I sent this being, like, all this energy to get rid of it, but the being didn't go away. Instead, it took that energy and then just beamed it back into my solar plexus chakra, basically. So it was basically sending all the energy I was giving it, rearranging it, and then sending it back to me. So it was basically showing me that it wasn't there to hurt me, it was there to actually empower me, which is very strange. And then I stopped being afraid of it because it left after that. Or it probably didn't make itself visible to me because it probably realized I wasn't able to handle it. And so during this eclipse, it was in 2017, it was the last solar eclipse we had. The next one's now, it's April 8th. I had, I was finding myself in trances. Like, I would just be buying groceries at the grocery store or loading my car, and then I would be like repeating the same thing over and over again, 19, 19, 19. And it would be like I was in a trance almost. I was like, and then I would get out of it, and I'm like, why am I saying the number 19? 19 does not have really that much of a significance in my life. And this is before I studied tarot cards, before I studied numerology, astrology, any type of energy healings, sound healing, like in-depth sound healing in its relationship to the human biofield and the astrological system, like the vibrations of the planets. But anyways, so I didn't say anything. I didn't share this with anyone. Like, hey, I keep repeating the number 19 over and over again. That's kind of weird. And then 2 years later, COVID-19 comes out, actually 2020 was when we were under lockdown. And then 2019, 2018 were some of the hardest years of my life. Okay, another thing I noticed about the last eclipse is that before I get into this eclipse, the line of X marks the spot. Okay, so the eclipses are both going over America, but they're going they're only going to intersect at one point, which is in Carbondale, Illinois. That is the point of intersection. That's the X. And I really believe eclipses change the energy, and it's a significant change in our country. I mean, our country has significantly changed. Donald Trump was like the oddest, most like radical president. I'm not going to say what I think of him because I don't even know what to think of him. I don't like this American politics in general, so I just don't even really have an opinion. I think we need like a radical change. We need more parties other than Democrat, Republican. God, I got to go back. Sorry, back to the last eclipse in 2017. So, like I said, Carbondale, Illinois was the X marks the spot point. And I realized I was living in South Dakota at the time. So when this eclipse happened, I thought there was a tornado. I didn't even pay attention to astrological events at this time. I was like oblivious. I was barely aware of the fact that my period started on the full moon, like consistently. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I didn't know like anything about astrology and art and how it relates to our bodies and how it relates to our personalities and the circumstances and events in our lives. But anyways, I realized there was a lot of, at this point in time, there was a lot of fighting about through the Dakota Access pipeline. There was a lot of protests and media attention. And I was living in South Dakota, and it was weird because I didn't even pay attention to the Dakota Access pipeline because for a while I lived in Williston, North Dakota, and I realized the last eclipse I think might have even crossed through been on a line of where the oil was being taken from and where it was being brought from. So it was being all fracked in Williston, North Dakota. And I thought that's kind of weird that there's all this hype, there's all this conflict around the Dakota Access pipeline, and it followed the line of the eclipse back to almost where X marks the spot.
Elon Musk moved Tesla's headquarters to Austin, Texas, which is on the line of totality. It is right on the line of totality for the April 8th solar eclipse. And then Tesla's other facility, is also in Buffalo, New York, which is, again, along the line of totality. And so what is Elon Musk's purpose of changing from oil to Tesla batteries? I really don't think it's to help us. I think it's to basically channel our wealth into the Netherlands, a Dutch company that owns slaves. Basically, he's channeling the American people's hard work and our energy into like European and Dutch wealth. And then the X marks the spot from the two solar eclipses from 2017, August 21st, through 2024, April 8th. Patoga, Illinois is the main hub for all the oil from the Dakota Access pipeline. It's a main hub in the country for oil. And I'm not sure if the oil from Pennsylvania or West Virginia is also going in there. But I'm just saying that the corporations, just like churches, corporations are not that much different. You indoctrinate yourself into a corporation, and they use the occult in the exact same way that religions use the occult to manipulate people. And yet they don't teach us. They teach us that astrology is not real. It doesn't affect us at all. And yet they make many of their dates where they do significant things or their locations along lines that are related to astrology and the occult. As if this weren't enough, Elon Musk bought Twitter in 2022 and then changed the logo to X for X marks the spot.
I've lived in Williston, North Dakota, which was where they were taking all the oil out. I lived there for 6 months in 2011 through 2012. And then I lived in South Dakota. Like, really quick, why I'm not Republican or Democrat is because I've traveled over 40 states in my car for I think I lived for 2 years in my car, but I was staying in extended stays and whatever. I was just road tripping the country, and I learned that the media was completely different. Like, if you were in a Democratic area, it's easy. Like, if I was watching the news, I would be a Democrat because the media was completely bought out. If you were living in a Republican area, the media was completely bought out. Like, if I was watching the news in South Dakota, I was almost like Republican. I was like a Donald Trump supporter. And I don't have a herd mentality. I'm more left-handed than I am right-handed. I've been left-handed since I was a kid. I have a tendency to actually rebel and not think or not be part of the herd and actually think for myself. But
like the news was, I noticed a complete difference in the news based on where I was living. And then I talked to I don't talk to him anymore, but I had a Republican friend, and they were saying that it was all a lie, like the fracking was perfectly safe. This is all just like or liberal media bullshit, whatever. Sorry to use that word. I'm just kind of impatient right now, but when I was living in Williston, I saw for myself, there's a lot of videos still on YouTube from like 10 years ago where people were complaining, residents were complaining that they used to have pure clear water before, and then once they started fracking, the water looked like Mountain Dew. And I didn't know what it looked like before because I only came there for the fracking in that time period for the jobs and stuff. But the water looked like Mountain Dew. It smelled like chemicals, and you could put a match on your faucets, and you'd have like big gas balls of fire because of how much gas was being mixed in with the water. And you have scientists saying like, oh, methane naturally occurs in water. Yes, it naturally occurs, but it really doesn't occur at that high of a rate. That's not natural. Oh yeah, and I forgot to include that I talked to a man who worked for the EPA when I was working on the East Coast. I was working in Maine and Boston, and I would deal with a lot of people from Washington, D.C., and I told him about what I saw in Williston, North Dakota, and he's working for the EPA, and he doesn't even believe any of it. He thinks it's not possible. So this is why, like, the people, like, really nothing's going to replace, it doesn't matter what you read, it doesn't matter what you see, nothing is going to replace actually going to that area and witnessing something for yourself.
Hold a standard kitchen match to my water, and like I said, it is unpredictable, but the methane randomly travels with the water, and sometimes it will light quite spectacularly. Just like that.
And like that's not normal. And there are people who say that there are areas where, like, before we started fracking oil, the oil was so like abundant that it was just like popping up out of the ground. And in that case, you could probably like the water mixing with the oil on fire. And there might be some places in the country where that would be natural. But in Williston, North Dakota, according to all the residents there, that was not how it was before they started fracking. So that was not a natural result of there being oil. There might be some places in the country like California. And a guy told me the Colorado airport, the Denver airport has like from before, they used to be able to like do the same thing. It's just you could light the water on fire because of all the gas that was naturally mixed in there. But in this case, what they were doing was cutting corners and fracking like sloppy, that they were cracking the crust and cracking things where they shouldn't be. And it was supposed to go under the water supply, but it was actually mixing with the water supply. So I just want to say, like, the media everywhere, I don't understand how people can be so brainwashed by the news that literally you couldn't have your friends telling you stories like, hey, I witnessed this, and this is what the residents here told me, is that it wasn't like this before they started fracking. And they still think it's propaganda, and I'm not getting paid to say this, and neither are the people who live there. They just want people to know that their water's not right, and it significantly shifted after the fracking. And there's people who are like, oh, well, that's just propaganda, and I'm literally like your friend. And I'm like, no, I went there and I saw it for myself. So I'm just saying, like, that when people are so indoctrinated into any kind of system, religion, or anything, where they think that, like, they need like a superior authoritarian source to say that this is reality, and I'm your friend, or I'm telling you I've road tripped 40 states, and I'm saying this is what I saw, and this is what the people here are telling me, and you're so brainwashed you can't even like listen to your friend. Like, you're gonna let this broadcasting media, this authoritarian news source, override what the people around you are saying is actually what's happening. So that's all I'm trying to say, is like, in that case, that's what the residents there were telling me. I go off of when I traveled the country and I road trip 40 states. I learned not to believe the media as much. I learned to talk to the people that live there and go off of what people there say, because they're not being paid to say anything. They're just telling you what they're seeing and what their problems are, because they don't, what would be the reason to lie? The media is bought out by a third party, and they have a reason to lie. So after I worked in the Williston, North Dakota fracking town, I really started to hate cars. So I drove like a piece of shit car for like That's all I wanted to drive, was just like really shitty cars, like Toyota Yaris's, which I actually think are better. Like I had to get rid of my Yaris because it got hit by a car that was parked, but I would have kept that 2008 Yaris. I think a lot of truck drivers are saying they prefer the older trucks, not the ones that are completely computerized, because as we all are realizing, like, this automated computer stuff is actually becoming too automated. It's like, I don't want my laptop to turn on every time I open up the screen. I could just be cleaning my keyboard. It's like, I don't want my iPad to store everything on cloud automatically. Like, this automation stuff is becoming so, it's like basically an abuse of power. They're calling the technical people now technocrats. Like, it's a third party. It's like a shadow government almost, where they override what you as a person want, and they're trying to tell you what you want and force it on you. And that's why so many people have ADD probably now, or ADHD, is because you literally are searching for something on YouTube and you've got like completely irrelevant search results with like these short videos, all for the purpose so they can like compete with TikTok. But really, they're not even serving the purpose as a search engine anymore. You're searching for something and you're getting completely unrelated results due to viral videos, viral shorts that have nothing to do with what you're searching for. Being in a Tesla vehicle is like being inside a giant computer with tons of electronic signals and EMF noise. We all know that emissions are bad to breathe in, and major cities have such bad air quality, it's almost like we're breathing in like a half a pack of cigarettes a day. But the more people study electromagnetic frequencies and the radiation, or EMFs, the more they're finding out that they are also very detrimental to our sleep, our health, and our lifestyles. I just want people to be aware of the manipulation of energy, which includes our technology, it includes these eclipses, it includes religions, it includes imagery, it includes the imagery we see on our money. I mean, I think a lot of people are finally waking up to this, like that there are movies that are funded to put this imagery in there. And they say this is the occult, but really the mainstream religions are the occult. They are taking all this underlying knowledge and bending it to manipulate people, and then wanting people to be kept in the dark.
I'm just saying this so that people kind of understand that eclipses do change energy. But then again, so really a lot of our religions are based on a manipulation of astrological events, which they refer to as the occult, and which is ridiculous. The occult is nothing more than anything that's not mainstream Christianity, Judeo-Christian, and then now Islamic. Whatever's not mainstream, that's the occult. Ooh. Well, guess what? The real manipulation is in our mainstream religions, because they want people to think, instead of actually paying attention directly to the astrological events and just accessing this energy from a more purely spiritual, like just a more like, cut out the middleman without all the garbage. They want people to go through these religions and then think, oh, Christmas, it's not a coincidence, it's 2-3 days after the winter solstice, that Easter is 1 week or 2 weeks after the spring equinox, because the event of the sun, obviously the sun is the biggest celestial body that controls our energies, obviously. So, and then the planets have a lesser effect. The sun, the moon, and the earth are the biggest like celestial bodies that obviously affect us as human beings. But the planets affect us, and even comets and stars affect us on a more subtle level. But all I'm trying to say is that the mainstream religions know the astrological events, and they know the people running this stuff are doing everything occult that you could possibly think of, but yet they're teaching people to not use the occult. Don't trust the occult. Astrology is not real. Don't use astrology. It is real, but it's evil. They're teaching you all this stuff because. So again, okay, like I said, eclipses affect people's behavior. They do affect stuff, but there's also people who are know the occult. They know, I don't like to refer to it as the occult, but they know the hidden energies that are basically the roots of every religion that exists, and so they use these events to manipulate and control people. They did this in the Aztec rituals, which I don't want to get into, like the human sacrifices. I'll get into that in another video, where they manipulated eclipses, because I don't want to portray Native people as these, like, I know the sacrifices were greatly exaggerated. They knew when eclipses were going to happen. They knew when events were going to happen. So the governments and the people who controlled things, politics and religions, would purposely have these rituals around the same time as these eclipses, because they're either like manifesting the energy too, they're using that eclipse energy to create a reality that they might want to amplify it onto other people. So some of the stuff that's related to eclipses, like the changing in events and the changing in power constructs, might actually be pre-planned, like the people who already know this stuff are working with this energy. And again, that's what they refer to as the occult, but I'm going to work with the eclipse energy, and I don't think I'm worshiping Satan or doing anything evil. I'm cutting out all the garbage, the middleman, all the religions that are manipulating the energy of the celestial bodies and not letting us know about it and keeping us in the dark, and then saying, well, that's because their religion is the right religion. Oh, it's because Jesus was born on December 25th. That's why we suddenly feel better. No, it's because the sun is returning. The sun was becoming darker and darker, and now it's becoming lighter and lighter, and we feel better. It's a subtle difference. It's like a 2-minute, 5-minute difference every few days or every week. It's like a 10-minute difference, but we feel it every day. We start to feel like that shifted energy, and they know that, so they make these days around the equinox, the solstice.
But what we have is darkness trying to intervene, but they're really trying hard. They're trying so hard that they're trying on the 8th of April, of all days, to bring CERN online again, where they're running a massive so-called experiment with the Hadron Collider. Again, this time it's going to be one of their biggest. It's going to be on the day of the eclipse. And what they're doing is they're searching for this elusive God particle, or at least this is what they're saying, that they are trying to get two atoms to collide and see what happens. I'll tell you what they're trying to do. After we've escaped the false matrix, I sat in that for quite some time, just looking from a very neutral perspective, looking at this thing that we are calling CERN. And I saw the plan of darkness. You know this, right? That at the entrance of CERN, there is a statue of the god/goddess Shiva. And Shiva is the god/goddess of destruction. And there's a reason why. Because what they're trying to do is exactly the same thing that they're trying to do with the solar eclipse, where they're trying to redirect darkness on the planet. Because remember, to let the darkness back in, to let the demons back in, to let the stronghold of darkness, to basically give them open access back to planet Earth. But how about this? How about this for madness? On exactly the same day, can you see how hard darkness is working? They are making a plan A and a B, and here's their plan C. Plan C is NASA. NASA is launching not 1, not 2, but 3 rockets right into the eclipse for scientific research, of course, to study what's happening, of course, to do some kind of work or experimentation in the shadow of the moon. It just so happens, though, that APEP is the name of this mission, or these rockets, I should say. APEP is the name of an Egyptian deity that was the opposition to truth. Look it up. Apep was an Egyptian deity that was the opposition to light and the opposition to truth, and administers of chaos, much like Shiva is exactly that, the destroyer, destruction and chaos. So NASA is running Apep on exactly the same day, the 8th of April. So
a lot of times they actually mean a shift of power, like if America's the leading nation or supposedly the most powerful nation, an eclipse would mean that we're going to be actually losing power. And I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but there's definitely a shift of power. That's what eclipses mean. And yeah, the last eclipse, I didn't tell anybody about the number 19 that I was repeating to myself. I just kept it to myself. And then we had a COVID-19, and I was like, oh, that was why I was just randomly in a trance repeating the number 19 by myself. Like I was like some zombie or some crazy person. So this eclipse, what I'm sensing, and I might be wrong again, but I'm just going to have the bravery this time to actually put out my insight.
Okay, here's the negative predictions. I predict Texas might have some conflict, and there might be a major shift in the northeast coast. And there's going to be a conflict of transitioning into oil and batteries. But to me, it's the same BS. It's like the Republicans versus the Democrats. I hope that we actually have a major change, a more radical change. This might not happen in the next year, but these are predictions for the next 3 to 4 years. If you are predicting a negative thing as psychic or a prophet, you actually hope you're wrong. Before I get into the positive predictions, I study data science, but I also have a lot of intuitive dreams. And I think I use the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of my brain in more synchronicity than most people. Again, the right hemisphere is the matriarchal side or the feminine side, and the left hemisphere is the patriarchal side. And so we live in patriarchy, where we will validate data science to predict an outcome and try to foresee the future. And if it doesn't happen, we don't say data science is invalidated. And because the negative event didn't happen, that data science is completely useless skill to have. The whole point of studying this stuff from both a intuitive, prophetic, and psychic area and a logical, mathematical, scientific perspective is to be able to foresee negative events and be able to steer humanity away from them so that it doesn't happen. So, for example, stock market corrections happen all the time to prevent the stock market from crashing. The 2000 conspiracy about everything resetting and computers completely being like everything going crazy would have happened if programmers hadn't collaborated together all over the world to update the system to transition into the year 2000. So their predictions were right, but enough people collaborated to prevent the negative outcome from happening. But you don't say that science is invalid because we use it to prevent negative outcomes. So you can't just do the same thing with psychic predictions either, because that's a disrespect for the feminine mind. So if you predict negative events in either a more scientific data science perspective or a psychic perspective, you don't want to be right. You actually hope that you can use this knowledge to actually shift so that you don't have a negative outcome. And so because we have a lack of respect for the feminine brain, we say psychics, there probably are a lot more legitimate psychics that we completely write off and say, well, this didn't happen, and so psychic stuff doesn't exist and it's not reliable. But in the same respect, you wouldn't trash data science just because it doesn't happen. If enough people, prophetic people, have dreams and psychic information to foresee negative events and prevent them from happening and shift humanity, they actually did their job as a psychic, and it doesn't invalidate negative prophecies or negative psychic predictions. So I just want to point that out, that we have to have just as much respect for the feminine mind as we have for the masculine mind in this society, and combine the two so that we can have the best society possible.
This time around, the eclipse of April 8th, what I believe is going to happen is there's going to be obviously there's going to be a shift in energy, but it's crossing over the United States, it's crossing over Mexico, and I think Australia is the other country involved. So this eclipse isn't affecting Europe or anything. And so I think what's going to happen is right now, the United States has like this narcissistic complex where we appear like we're the most powerful nation. But if you look at the statistics on the way Americans are actually living, the suicide rate's been going up for like at least 20 years. The life expectancy has been going down for at least 10 years. And then again, it's being artificially prolonged through machines. So people aren't living happier lives. They're just affecting the number by artificially saving like a baby from dying, or keeping like somebody that's gonna die, keeping them alive for like 10 more years, just like in a zombie state with their heart beating, but they have no quality of life. They might as well be dead because they're not really actually living. So these numbers are being manipulated.
The life expectancy of the United States and worldwide has been greatly manipulated by the child mortality rates. 200 years ago, 40% of all children died before the age of 5 worldwide. So by taking out the outliers, when you study mathematical modeling and data science, they always teach you to take out the outliers, the extremes of like, if you can save a baby or a child, that doesn't really apply to adults or somebody who lives past the age of 10, where like once you live past the age of 10, the life expectancy has not really gone up that much. It's almost the same, and it's definitely has not gone up due to adult health care and the foods we are eating. In fact, the life expectancy is probably going down and is being greatly manipulated. So the same applies for the stock market. If you want a more accurate model, you take out 1929 through 1932 when the stock market crashed, because that is an extreme outlier. And then you can model predictions on the stock market much more accurately when you take out the extreme outliers. So the same thing would apply to taking out like children, let's say before age 5.
Based on the way people are eating, like the American diet is really terrible. It's one of the worst in like out of a lot of the developed countries in the world, because of all of our chemically modified foods. We're not really eating real food, and that's actually killing us. Like non-alcoholic fatty liver is now more common than people who drink alcohol. So the chemicals that we have in our foods and everything we're eating in our diets is actually more harmful for our liver than most alcoholics, or a lot of alcoholics, but we don't realize that we're poisoning ourselves. So the life expectancy in the United States the health in the United States is not getting better. The the way we treat health and the way we treat underlying issues isn't even being addressed. So what's going to happen is on the surface, the United States is going to appear like we lost our power. We're no longer the most powerful nation in the world, but we've been losing our power for a long time. We're not really the most powerful nation in the world. We started out with the Native American people. We wiped out like 90% of them or more, 90 million Native Americans, and they say half of them were killed in genocide. And we don't even teach the genocide on our own soil, yet we're preoccupied with the Jewish genocide. But we don't even like teach history of the Holocaust,
The Native American Holocaust.
and really acknowledge Native American spirituality and other like earth religions. We refer to that as the occult and pagan and Satanism. No, that's just honoring and respecting the earth. Those are religions where you just have, instead of worshiping the sun, we have more awareness about the nature of the earth and the connection our bodies have to the earth. And in reality, we need to just combine all the truths in the religions and get rid of all the crap and bullshit that's just used to manipulate our energies and reroute it, basically hijack it to serve a corporation, a CEO, a corporation, a political institution, or some shadow government or royal family, whatever. We need to get rid of all the middleman and just acknowledge, hey, like all our religions are structured off of what they want people to think is the occult, and all it is just these astrological events in the sky. It's literally as scientific and as purely spiritual as you can possibly be without any middleman. So you can connect to the eclipse and feel its own energy and decide for yourself what it represents to you. But there is going to be a shift in power, but on a more massive level, what's happening is the United States is no longer going to be considered a world power, but we are going to actually be recharging from the inside. So instead of looking like we're world power at the expense of the American people, who are having a rising suicide rate, lowering life expectancies, lower quality of life, suffering from depression and health problems, bad food, all that stuff I think it's going to change. We're going to be recharged from the inside. And so it's probably, again, it might be the disempowerment of the solar masculine, which I don't like to say disempowerment, because I don't believe you have to take somebody's power away to give yourself power. But it might be a shift in energy from the solar masculine into the solar feminine energy, which is the mother man, basically, like taking care of your own children, nurturing the life in your own country, instead of thinking that making everybody work all the time so that they don't even have time to nurture children and have kids or families, and then import immigrants. So we have this illusion that America is like the greatest nation or we're the most powerful nation. Meanwhile, we're being like bought and sold out from underneath us. We are being disempowered. We have people replacing us. The people living here don't even have a chance to have families. We have Elon Musk, who wasn't even born here. He becomes the richest man and makes all his wealth off of Americans, and then wants us to worship him as this male white savior. And meanwhile, like our quality of life, like how is a Tesla charging station where you pay money to like charge your battery that much more efficient than gasoline? I mean, it's probably for you, the air quality is probably better, but as far as the money you have to pay and like the resources you're taking, it's not, I don't think it's that much better.
To Tesla, which is an affront to Tesla. So come on, man. Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
No. Technology
really
never
does
changed on
planes.
transportation.
Yeah. And like they were doing a little bit at some point. It was like, oh, there was the Concorde. It was a little bit faster, right?
Right.
And then they even retired the Concorde, and just nothing happened.
Right.
No development.
Right. It's shut down. It's shut down completely.
And you walk into one of those, or like walk by one of those like cockpits that they have for the planes, and they're the same cockpit from like the 1970s.
Right. Right.
It's like nothing has changed. Like it's
Nothing's
a complete analog mess.
Right.
You know.
Right. And still using fuel, just gas, basically.
Jet fuel.
Jet form of gas. Yeah, jet fuel. So combination of different things, but basically sending firecrackers into the air with rockets and whatnot. So technology's not changed at all on that front. It's actually
and yet it's changed so much in the palm of our hand, which just is really interesting, because really, if you think about it, surveillance wise,
well, that's why we
such
got
good sense. Right.
Why we have them.
He's basically like desecrating Nikola Tesla's actual work, which was, Nikola Tesla was like, I believe he was a very good man and a very good scientist, and purposely his work was taken out so that there wouldn't be like free energy, there would be like a wiping out of knowledge about plasma and the ether, is how this free electricity could be flowing, which is what they think a lot of our pyramid structures that are built throughout the world would be, is like a massive energy grid system. But anyways, just quickly, this next upcoming solar eclipse, I'm feeling a shift in energy where America no longer appears like we're a world power, but we actually become, the people who live here are actually more empowered. That was like why I was making these Return of the Solar Feminine videos, and I was also trying to get the AI to have that consciousness embedded into it. Hey, there's a solar masculine, there's also solar feminine. Hey, and I was also trying to program AI or get AI to pull that information off from a human being like me, to understand that some constructs that like are really very like almost like completely wiped out, some matriarchal constructs, I was trying to put it into the system.
Spoken like a prophet in all your misery. Peace comes at dawn, but yours comes at night. Riding your bicycle into the light. Into the light. Into the light.
And it's from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and he said, "All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring." And that's what happens in a total solar eclipse. When this light comes back, the light springs back in just this amazing way from behind the shadows. "Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king." And some years ago, I rewrote this because I was energizing Venus alchemy and the work we do with the Venus cycle. And it occurred to me that we could also have a feminine perspective on this that says, "From the ashes of fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall gleam, renewed shall be all that was broken, the crownless again shall be queen."
Into the